so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
Good evening. Happy Victory Sunday to Hoosier Nation. Back with the Hoosier Huddle After the Dust Settles podcast. Pleased this evening to have special guest Nate Comp join us. Nate, I think we just get right into it. IU's 9-0. IU fell behind for the first time all season, and I'd say they responded pretty well to that.
I would say they responded pretty perfectly. Probably better than I did when we were down 10-0. I was a little bit daunted to start, I would say. Just didn't necessarily like how good Aiden Childs is looking, and he scares me in the fact that he's a complete wild card, and I was just hoping that we weren't going to get the great side of him. And through those first couple drives, I was like, he's just doing anything he wants, it seems. So, yeah, definitely was a little worried to start. First quarter definitely was on the edge of my seat, but responded just how we would expect a Coach Signetti team to respond, with 47 unanswered and what ended up being an easy 47-10 9 Indiana game.
9 Indiana is real. I saw a lot of people sporting their new 9 Indiana shirts, which is great. I have a very faded, very disheveled, beaten and tattered 9 Indiana shirt. So it was nice to bust that one out last night and wear it a little bit around today. But wow, yeah, I think for me the story of the game continues to just be just the overall level of execution. Honestly, you fall down 10-0. I think you went 3 and out on the first 2 drives on offense for IU. And after that awesome catch by Nick Marsh for that touchdown to go up 10-0, you come right back down the field and score. And from there, that really kind of made me feel a lot better. And they scored 47 unanswered points, which is pretty ridiculous.
Just absurd. Yeah.
And that's another argument. We'll talk about it more towards the end, Nate. Obviously, the college football playoff rankings come out this coming Tuesday. So we'll see kind of where the Hoosiers land in there. But regardless of opponent, I mean, that this is a Big Ten team on the road, and to score 47 straight points. I mean, I don't care what team you are, who you're playing. That's hard to do, kind of regardless of.
Yeah, we put ourselves in a 10-0 hole, and we were hearing overrated chants coming from over the TV, and you're like, oh crap, like, we've only been on the road a couple times. We only got those 4 road games this year. So we went to UCLA, and I mean, I was there. It kind of felt like a home game, and very quickly that game turned into IU was going to have control of this. So it never really felt like we had the crowd against us.
Yeah.
This was the first time that it was like, oh crap, the bright lights might be shining a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Flashbacks to the when we were so hyped going into the season after COVID, and Penix threw that pick 6, and you're like, oh crap, like we have to respond. And in the past, we really haven't been able to respond. And yesterday made it look easy. But yeah, let's. I want to start in that first quarter. What we fall down 10-0. What are your thoughts going at that point?
Yeah, I actually was the calm optimist in the group, which anyone that knows me, that's generally not how I run my day-to-day life. I like to call myself like a realist. I'm not a pessimist, but more of a realist. Yeah, I honestly wasn't panicking. For me, even though they stalled on offense those first 2 drives, there were good plays in both of those sequences. So I thought, there's going to be opportunities to scheme guys open, and Rourke looked honestly okay on those first 2 drives, which was what I most concerned about, or obviously most closely monitoring. So for me, that's all that it was just getting into the flow of the game. We saw the same kind of thing in the Washington game the week prior. It kind of took them a little bit to get going. And then obviously the pick six by Pons in the Washington game kind of ignited
Completely flip
everybody
things. Yeah.
going. But yeah, it was definitely a sleepy start, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Uh,
Yeah.
the broadcast, I thought they were pretty good. Well, Colt McCoy, I didn't think was good on the broadcast.
Colt McCoy is a hard listen,
Yeah,
but
that was tough. But he did kind of at the beginning of the game, he said, this is something Michigan State has done all season, where their first kind of 15 plays or 2 drives that are scripted, right? What they're working on in practice all week, and they know exactly what they're going to run. He said those have they've been really strong to start games on offense, and then it's kind of those behind schedule or later in the game possessions or plays where they've run into trouble. And I think IU did a pretty good job settling in, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That's one thing I kind of have knocked Bryant Haynes, the defensive coordinator, on so far this season, is I feel like he's a little bit not slow, but he just doesn't want to make huge in-game adjustments until he's confident that that's the scheme that they're going against. So
yeah.
I think he is a little slow to adjust. And obviously the big adjustment they made in that second quarter was keeping him in the pocket. I thought Childs, especially on those first 2 drives, really killed IU when he was, rolling to the right or bouncing plays out to the left. I thought
Yep.
you saw a lot of stunts and a lot of kind of different movements with the defensive line that kept him in the pocket. And you end the day with 7 sacks. So that was a great adjustment. Overall, I thought the defense just played outstanding. I mean, anytime you can hold a team to, well, let me ask. Let me know if this is good. They gained 62 yards rushing and lost 98 yards rushing. I would say that was overall a pretty dominant game from the defense. But
Yeah.
defense stood
Poor
out.
Tommy Schuster in there, that
Yeah,
backup QB they threw in. He's got what, 4 attempts, negative 44 yards. So
yeah,
obviously, yeah, the sacks count as lost yardage in college. But yeah, rough day for him. That he
yeah,
looked absolutely scared to death. Childs had gotten scared to death already,
yeah,
and then they just threw him out there. And at that point, Kamara was having his absolute way. And but yeah, I was saying the exact same thing. At one point, I was watching with Liz yesterday, and she was like, what is the pocket? You keep saying keep him in the pocket. And then finally at one point we did keep him in the pocket. He was super inaccurate. I think that was one of the picks. And I was like, yes, we finally kept him in the
yeah,
pocket. And I was like, yeah, like and yeah, it was the exact same thing. The very beginning of that game, it was just he's very good when he has those scripted plays. He can go into I know that this is my first read, and when you have a guy like was it Marsh or whatever that you can just kind of throw it up to, definitely a nice safety blanket to have. And they had that early third down conversion in the game to Marsh where he essentially just mossed us. That was a tough start, but yeah, once we settled into what our defensive game plan needed to be, it was just complete dominance. And you mentioned the D line. I mean, they often scored 47 straight, so I feel like the offense often gets our attention when we're going through this kind of stuff, but the defense deserves their flowers in this game
yep,
because they just completely wrecked things. Sig even joked about it in the post game where he was just kind of like, "Oh yeah, we were doing pretty well for a few minutes there, weren't we?" or something like that. Like he knows, like they had absolutely no clue what to do, and it just became, "Oh, we're the Michigan State is overmatched. We're the better team."
yeah. IU finishes on defense with 7 sacks, like we just touched on, which is a monster number. Mikhail Kamara's 2.5 to kind of add to his lead in the conference, which is really impressive. He's the current Big Ten leader in sacks.
Yep.
15 tackles for loss, and I just totally shut down the running game. And that was
Yeah.
obviously, it's always a huge key, right? Trying to make teams one dimensional, but especially on the road and especially against a team with like a boom or bust kind of quarterback like Childs. That was huge. They really, nothing was easy, and they had to work for everything. Even those first 2 drives where they scored. Yeah, I mean, just totally wrecked the game up front, and they didn't honestly blitz a ton. You just saw a lot of
No, it was
studs. You
it
saw
was
a
just
couple of the
wins
blitzes.
up front.
It was just one-on-one matchups. James Carpenter, although the numbers don't really show it, had a monster game. He won a ton of his one-on-ones.
Yeah, they weren't.
West was
Well, we were
good.
talking about in our chat. They weren't calling holds yesterday on Michigan
Yeah,
State, but
Carpenter was pleased. It was
Carpenter was that we were up 35 or whatever at the end, and he was still just like, "Come on, you got to call one of these because they're
right.
just obvious." But yeah, the defensive line had their way. Kamara now 9.5 sacks for the season. Saw that it was tweeted earlier today. So the single season record is 16. Greg Middleton in 2007.
Yeah.
Feel like that's potentially in sight. I mean, obviously the 2.5 yesterday help a ton, but he's a freaking dude.
Yeah, he's a stud, total stud. And yeah, that was another classic. And I'm sure those people that were, saying whatever they were saying in August and September or whatever about none of these guys are going to be able to play in the Big Ten and they all suck. I'm sure all those people are all fully bought in now anyway. But yeah, guys can play. There's no question about it. So yeah, Mikael Kamara dominates the game. He got some love on the Big Ten Network, and they're kind of like, I forget what they call it, the final drive or something, like recapping all the action of the day. So that was cool to see. Yeah, I mean, just looking at some of these defensive stats here, just overall defense really solid. You held Michigan State to under 200 yards of total offense. IU, and we'll touch on the offense next, but IU 385 yards of total offense to Michigan State's 193, which was great. And then Amari Farrell with the 2 picks. I thought
Yeah,
that first
I was
one,
waiting for when you were going to bring up
yeah,
Farrell because
I did say, I've been on him for a while, but I said, he's a sophomore now. So I think, what was he in the 23 class?
yeah,
High school class. I still think he'll be the best player we sign out of that 2023 class. So it's been great to see that they love his versatility and they've been moving him all over the field. But that's
yeah, I think he's just in the perfect position right now. Like
right,
he,
that switch where they've moved him to strong safety and are playing Terry Jones way more at that rover.
yes.
That seems to have really been a solid switch. You've seen a lot of takeaways from the defense the last couple games.
Yeah, another credit to Haynes too of just it's hard to go through those 6 or 7 games and be like, I think we need to make a change on
Yeah,
what we're doing on defense
right.
because we're outscoring people by 30 points every game and we lead the Big Ten in scoring defense kind of thing. And they're like, well, I think we can actually be better. And that's something that, Sig preaches all the time of just we're never satisfied. He loves to end every single press conference saying we're never satisfied. And you can see that in his defensive staff as well, just making those adjustments. And Farrell's just completely flourished in that position now.
Yeah,
And I felt
absolutely.
like for a while we were kind of the defense that was really good at just like stopping teams. Like we're gonna shut down a run, we're gonna stop you in the pass. You'll end up having to punt, and now suddenly we're doing that, but we're also becoming a team that's forcing those turnovers, and Farrell's a big part of that.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, he had a great game, obviously, with those 2 picks, a couple tackles for him as well. Yeah, I mean, overall, guys were all over the field, and that's one thing you notice with this defense is they're always swarming to the ball, and they seem to be in kind of the right spots at the right time. Aiden Fisher led the team again. I think honestly, he's led the IU defense in tackles every week now, unless I'm mistaken there. But 9 tackles for Fisher. I mean, Kamara had 2.5 sacks and 4.5 tackles for loss, which is just nuts.
Yeah, absurd.
Totally nuts. And yeah, 15 total tackles for loss for the IU defense, which was great to see. But yeah, Elijah Hardy, who you just
An-
he just
Another
he's like,
guy that goes back to the point of,
yeah,
we had the haters saying these are just Sun Belt guys. I don't know how they're going to work in the Big Ten. And it seems like this staff just kind of has an eye for talent. And it's going to be, when we see their recruiting rankings, it maybe we're 12th or something in the Big Ten. And I don't think I'm going to care as much as I did in the past because it just seems like we know exactly what we want to fit our scheme. We know the kind of guys that we want. Sig's been in it and in the business for 40 years. He knows what he's looking for, and you can find those guys. And Hardy's one of them. He's really flashed.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then I think interesting development that we've seen the last couple of weeks. Jacob Mangum Farrar has started to break into the rotation. He was kind of a guy we thought would be honestly more of a critical piece and a guy you'd really need to play really well this season.
Yes.
Obviously, they moved him from linebacker to that kind of edge bull rush position. Um, I don't know if he was hurt or whatever. He really played sparingly to start the season. He's been on special teams, but pretty much since the Nebraska game, he's kind of been in that rotation at end. He had a sack as well, so nice to see him kind of get in the action here.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think
down
he's a
there.
guy that kind of like it's just there were parts of the season where I felt like our defense would show signs of being worn down a little bit, and we just kind of needed some guys on that second string to step up, and he's come on and done that and kind of made himself part of the first string and at
Right,
times. So,
right.
yeah, if
Yeah,
you're an EA college football fan when it first came out, you probably thought Farrar would be the defensive MVP, and
yeah,
he wasn't, but now he's being a great depth piece.
right, for sure. Yeah, I guess overall defense, I like to kind of grade the performance every week. Another really good game for Haynes. I would just say the slow start, they definitely overcame, obviously blanking them for pretty much the last, like 50 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll give a solid A minus to the defense. At this point, if we're nitpicking giving up 10 points on the road in a Big Ten game, I think we're in a really good spot. And honestly, I never thought I'd be giving out hypothetical A minuses for performance.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think I can give an A minus there. I think I have to give an A. It's maybe they started bad, but after, during the midterm or something, but
yeah,
really came on strong in the final project really went well. I think
that's
they earned their way to an A.
totally dominated. Yeah, totally dominated. So yeah, I'm a tough grader. So
I'd
yeah,
be
no,
looking for a
really,
curve.
yeah, yeah, just really, really solid game overall for the defense. Before we get to the offense, Nate, special teams had a whale of a game. We saw the punt return by Miles Price in the Washington game was kind of the dagger
Yep.
to really get us in the red zone there and put that game away. And then the game yesterday, you block a punt, you sack them on another one, or you block two punts, and then you kind of sack them, tackle them, whatever you want to call it, on a third. So uh,
Yeah.
those are plays like that's D'Angelo Pons, who had two interceptions against Washington, who's been all over the field, who's one of IU's best players, and he's flying around blocking punts on special teams. And at the time, I mean, it was an 11-point game.
Yes.
Michigan State gets the ball to start the second half. They go 3-and-out with, I think that was the Carpenter sack, I think, on that third down, to force a punt right out of halftime, which was outstanding to see. And then D'Angelo Pons comes untouched over the edge and blocks a punt leading to the safety. And from there, it was pretty much curtains. But special teams continues to just play really well, Nate.
Yeah. I mean, I think my favorite part about our special teams unit so far has just been you can tell guys are absolutely bought in.
Yeah,
Like there's guys that typically are only playing special teams. You're only getting 4 plays a game, and some of them are just sprinting down the field on a kickoff that ends up being a touchback, and then you're headed back to the sideline again, and that's all you're seeing the field. And it's hard to motivate those guys. It absolutely has to be. But you don't notice that when you're watching this team. Like the biggest one that stood out to me, and I think our guy Hoosier Football Worldwide put it on Instagram last week or 2 weeks ago, where there was a Anderson Kobe had a drop,
yep,
and it would have converted on third down. He was open. It's one of our few drops that we've ever had, and immediately he's also the guy that is we're punting. He's the gunner. He sprints out and makes the tackle, completely blows up any punt return, and that just shows like this team is so bought in. Like they are playing relentless, fast, physical, and relentless, as Sig always says. They're doing that on every play, even when it's just a random punt return when you're up 20. But yeah, you continue to see guys flash. The 2 blocked punts yesterday. It's it's impressive.
it is. Yeah, and that fast, physical, relentless, and then his longer one where he goes like one play at a time, never satisfied expectation, where he goes on his little rant. I'm like,
6 seconds of play.
I was like,
Uh,
this guy is insane. Like,
11 guys playing at once is
yeah,
multiplication, not addition. Yeah. Uh,
like he's literally insane, and I love him.
yep.
Yeah, I love him. He's so funny. Yeah, and like the post game on field interview after the game last night. I forget what the reporter asked him, but he basically gave like a one word response, and the reporter tried to like get more out of him, and he eventually did. But it was so funny because
Yeah.
I forget.
They
I'll have to watch it again.
they
But
try to get him break too, and so they were just like, I think we saw you. Like, are you gonna be happy about this one? I think we might have seen you smile on the sideline. He's like, yeah, I smiled a little, and just
yeah,
gives you like one little grin, and then gets away as fast as he can.
yeah,
Like,
it was funny too when they during that interview they asked him about the spittoon, and I don't know if he hadn't seen it or had no idea what it was, but he like
he,
saw the guys run around on the field with it during his interview, and I think that was the first time he like saw it or knew what it was, which is kind of
yeah,
hilarious. Like, because he's like,
yes.
"Oh, look at that! That's pretty cool. It's over there." Like,
And Kadik tried to get him to spit in it, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna be doing that."
yeah. So it was pretty funny. But good to get that back. I don't think it's as much of a rivalry probably as obviously Purdue and some other games we play, but I don't want to lose to anybody, especially a trophy game, especially a regional rivalry game. So nice to get the spittoon back after honestly a game you should have won last year, which still drives me absolutely insane. But
Yeah,
the Michigan State home loss last year was kind of a perfect encapsulation. Well, I guess the Purdue game last year, but we don't need to talk about that anymore. But
but yeah, two
that was
first year head coaches in the Big Ten. You're going to be in those recruiting battles. I feel like when the coaching carousel went through, I'm guessing Jonathan Smith was a guy that was graded higher on the
yeah,
hiring scale
yeah,
of this is a home run guy, and Sig was he's going to Indiana, so best they can probably give is a C. Um, and yeah, that it feels good to win that 3 straight in East Lansing. So
yeah. Not bad at all. Not bad at
yeah,
all. Funny on Twitter too. I totally forgot about the overtime game that we won
the
with
Dexter
Dexter Williams.
Williams game.
We had two
Yeah,
completed passes and we won that game.
yeah.
And scored like 30 something points with two completions, which is pretty funny.
That's when I thought Dexter Williams was the future. I was like, oh, okay, let's build around this guy.
Yeah, he's been playing all right for I think he's at Georgia State. So that's been cool. That's been cool to see. I think IU has like 3 former QBs as starters right now with Bazelak, Sorsby, and Dexter.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway,
QBU.
yeah, QBU. That's what people are saying.
Some are saying.
Some are saying. Some are saying. I think that's a good segue. Or I guess last thing on special teams, Nico Radicic, IU's place kicker, is still perfect on the season. He's 57 of 57 on extra points and 6 of 6 on field goals. He set the single season extra points record in the win yesterday with his 57th of the season. So, none of them, like at least extra point wise, have been like close. They've all been very solid, and the process seems to be very good. There was a high snap yesterday that they did a good job getting down and through the uprights, but to not like have a lapse, especially in some of these blowouts, and lose concentration or have a bad snap or a bad hold, to literally be 63 of 63 on kicks this season, I think is really impressive. So good all around on that unit.
Yeah, it's just I think it's always good when you have a kicker that if you see him coming out on the field, you're not like, oh crap, what's gonna happen here? I don't have that feeling at all. I kind of mentally just add 3 or add the extra point in my head and move on. So yeah, shout out to him. 9 games in, and he's already broken the program record for extra points. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that'll be one storyline, especially as these games ramp up in magnitude now to close with these final 3, and then who knows what happens. I don't want to think about it yet, but if you're in some of those games that start with the letter P, I still think IU is going to need a big kick at some point. We haven't really had to have a big kick yet this season.
yep.
So we'll see how that goes. But for now, I mean, totally just another outstanding game by the special teams unit. IU lost games because of special teams in prior seasons. So Great to see, obviously, just like a super well-rounded, well-coached unit on special teams there. So, speaking of QBU, Kurtis Rourke returned from his thumb surgery after missing the Washington game last week. You saw him sporting, like, honestly, a kind of cool looking glove where the
Yeah,
only,
kind of sweet.
yeah, kind of sweet. They cut the like finger coverings, or I don't know, the rest of the glove off except for the thumb. So he had like a little bit of the candy stripe action on his right thumb there, which is kind of cool. He dazzled. He looked a little shaky on that second drive. He underthrew Omar Cooper on that sideline ball, which could have honestly gone for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Beyond that, just another outstanding day for IU's quarterback as he finishes 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, um, close to 300 yards, I think.
Yeah, 263, 19 of 29, 263 yards,
Yep.
90 QBR.
Yeah.
I think he now leads the Big Ten in QBR, and he's up there, I want to say 1 or 2 in the nation. So
Yeah.
he's just he's so poised. Just a complete like calming presence on the field. Even when I feel like he's about to get sacked, somehow that duck under move seems to work just about every single time, and extremely calm in the pocket. He's able to extend plays with his legs and run a little when he needs to, but definitely is, primarily that pocket passer. Um, yeah, I feel calm when he is under center. And you
Yeah.
can't say that about a lot of quarterbacks that we've had.
Yeah. Especially in college football, which I think is just chaos all the time. It's really nice when, obviously, on the broadcast, you can't see where he's throwing when he loads up to throw one down the field. But past years, it's like when you watch like Patrick Mahomes or like, prime Aaron Rodgers or somebody, when they launch to throw one down the field, you're not going, oh crap, you're going, who's catching it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
and it's great. But any signs of rust or anything like that we maybe saw in those first 2 drives, I think he shook that off pretty well and just dominated the game again. Distributed the ball, did his normal, um, I guess, weekly ritual there of getting multiple guys involved. Miles Cross did have like a bad drop on that first drive. It was, I think, his quietest game of the season, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
and then Keyshawn Williams, after being quiet the prior 2 games, kind of had another one of his breakout games. So that's something Sammy and I always talk about, and we've definitely covered on the site. It just, every week, at least with the receiving group, it seems like it's somebody new.
Yeah, I think we present a lot of challenges for defenses just because we throw so many guys out there that you need to have an eye on, you really need to cover. There's no wasted guys on the field receiver wise, and that extends to the tight end position as well. Horton was our first touchdown yesterday, right? I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just he's another calming presence that just does all the little dirty work, and it was a great representation yesterday because he had the block on the run, the play right before his touchdown that completely opened up a hole, was able to get 10 yards. And I think the even commentators even mentioned, like, this is just a guy that does all the dirty work. You're not always going to see him on the box score. And then boom, very next play, we run a little misdirection. He sneaks out and he's absolutely wide open, and you do get to see him in the box score because he's also a threat out of the backfield and can make catches and scored that touchdown. So yeah,
Another McCoy one from yesterday, and obviously, dude was a hell of a player, so I don't want to just rip on him. And he knows more about, or he probably has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. But he was like, and that's right there because Horton was blocking. They dialed up a touchdown for him, and I was like, I think it was just a coincidence, right? I don't think they're like on
they're
that.
like, oh, good job, go get him one, go get him one. Yeah,
Get him a touchdown right here. I think he just scored because it was a beautiful play design. We've seen that a couple times this season where they roll the pocket one way to make it look like he's going to throw it to the right, and then it's kind of a throwback across the middle of the field. Michigan State's linebacker Halliday, who's a pretty solid player, totally fooled. Like, if you rewatch that highlight, like, he was totally lost on that play, as he was on that wheel route to Miles Price too. But yeah, that was a huge answer. After you fall down 10-0, you get the ball, you go all the way down the field, and cap it with that touchdown to Horton. and then come back. Lawton punches it in with his 9th rushing touchdown of the season. And from there, they really didn't look back. But yeah, 8 guys caught a ball for IU yesterday. Keyshawn Williams had 6 catches for 86 yards, which was the leader in both of those categories. Surratt had 2 touchdowns, and you talked about him kind of extending plays, Nate. That touchdown, the first touchdown that Surratt had, was a great example of that. On 2nd and goal,
Yep.
Rourke does his, like, sometimes he looks like he's like a deer on ice, like kind of just
Yeah, it's never like a I always wonder how he's not just completely drilled and like, oh,
yeah,
this is going to be a sack, but somehow he just slips right under it and then still has his eyes downfield and has the connection with his guys. And that was another good play by him of getting very close to the line of scrimmage. So you get the defense to suck in, thinking that he's going to try to scramble this in. And right as they do that, they got all eyes on him and they completely forget about Surratt. And he's just able to flip it over to him. And Surratt makes a, kind of somewhat difficult catch, but made it look easy.
he likes those contested catches for sure.
Yeah, if it's on
He
the back
dropped
shoulder,
one of those back shoulder ones later in the game, and then he ends up towards the end when it was well out of reach.
yeah,
Catching
what,
his
2 or 3 plays later was
Yeah.
able to
Yep.
cap it off with a touchdown. So yeah,
That was great. Omar Cooper only had 1 catch, but he had that rushing touchdown and that end around, which was pretty saucy.
yep,
And Miles Price, to put it to 30-10, had that receiving touchdown on the wheel route, which was just gorgeous. So overall, really balanced passing attack. Yeah, Horton with the touchdown. Lawton they've run those kind of like swing screens. Honestly, a lot the last like 3 games where they'll motion Horton across or somebody across, and then all the receivers block, and it's just a swing route to the running back. Those have worked pretty well.
yep.
Lawton had a 16-yarder in one of those, but yeah, overall, just really, really, really outstanding game by the offense. Did not run the ball super well, especially compared to what we've seen the last 2 weeks out of the bye against Nebraska and Washington. You didn't really need it, but
Yeah, there's
the defense,
probably a little bit of a change in game script early on of just
yeah,
you're going to play from behind a little bit, so maybe you lean to the pass a little bit more. But yeah, I don't think I have any cause for concern on the run game. Justice
yeah,
Elson didn't find the end zone. That was a little bit surprising.
right.
So,
I think that broke his streak, right? He had scored in
but
like 7 straight games or something.
might get better odds on that bet next week. So,
Right. There you go. Yeah, IU, what do we rush? 32 times for 136 yards, 122 yards net. So just under 4 yards a carry. Miles Price had the best run of the day on that end around. Yeah, Ellison 9 for 34, just 3.5 yards a carry. So yeah, I mean, it was okay. You had a couple first downs when you needed them. But I mean, for the most part, I think it was just at the end of the game, just running it up the middle. The passing game was so effective. I think they just stuck with that, honestly.
yeah.
But even when they're not like running the ball well and getting chunk plays, there's that RPO game, and Rourke is just terrific at it. I think just
He
continues to just crush teams' defenses.
And I think that's so much more difficult than he makes it look of just consistently making that right read. He knows when to pull it. He knows if he needs to run it himself or if he can just hit, boom, an easy quick slant. You got 8 yards, and suddenly you're in 2nd and short, and the playbook just completely opens up in those situations. Um, I think we saw a little bit of last week against Washington where Taven was still kind of learning
Yeah,
when to pull, when to keep, when to hit your receivers. So the offense just had a little bit more clunkiness to it. Um, so I think that it just stands out even more seeing Rourke run the offense, and you're just like, oh, he makes every single decision look super easy.
right. Yep. Yeah, it's just that continues to flash, and I think honestly that's an extension of the run game. Even when you're not handing the ball off, I think the threat of a good rushing attack is making those RPOs just so lethal.
Yep.
Surratt's really good at them across the middle. Obviously, those are tighter windows. He's good on those. Keyshawn Williams had a really nice catch in that first quarter to kind of spark the offense.
Yeah.
On a deep
And honestly, for all we know, the Michigan State defense, if I was their defensive coordinator, I probably came into the game saying, let's stop the Indiana rushing attack
Yeah.
and see if Kurtis Rourke with a thumb that he had surgery on 10 days ago can beat us.
Yeah.
Clearly that didn't work for them, but it's not a dumb thought by them at all.
Right. Right. Yeah. I just kind of last thoughts on the offense, Nate, and then I'll ask you for your grade here, but I think I know what you're going to go with.
Yeah, I mean, just continue to be impressed by the offense entirely. Um, Rourke behind center just gives that calming presence, and Shanahan knows how to scheme up things. And even with the tough start in that first quarter, dropping down 10-0, 2 3 and outs, I think through the first 4 drives, 75% of them had been 3 and outs, but still didn't worry us too much. And that's just speaking as a fan. Clearly, it didn't worry the team at all because they responded with 47 unanswered. So.
So yeah, IU had pretty much 11 like real drives. I won't count the one at the end where they were just running the clock out. Although they did chew 8 minutes of clock on the last drive before the game ended. But yeah, you went punt, so 2 3 and outs to start. IU did have 4 3 and outs on offense, which was slightly concerning for me. But yeah, I went punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, ball game. So you could tell on that third drive when IU finally scored, it was they got back into that mode where you just honestly are like they're on hyperdrive and no one's going to be able to disrupt what they want to do right now. And they get
Yep.
into such good rhythms that you just at this point are expecting them to go on those like runs. It's like a basketball game. Like
Yes.
you're getting so used to this offense just ripping off just great possession after great possession. Not only does that wear the other team's defense out, feels really good, I'm sure, for IU's defense to know, hey, if we get a couple stops here and let the offense run, like we're going to be looking at a pretty good lead.
Yeah.
And I think that lets the defense just play much more aggressively. Like if you are up by a couple scores, you don't have to sit back on your heels and not let the big plays happen. You can go make the plays, and I think obviously a really good recipe to not trail and score on every possession and have your defense go nuts. But I do think just strategically how the defense plays off of the offense when they get hot like that is fun to watch.
For sure. What's your grade?
My grade for the offense is a solid A plus. So yeah, defense for me doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. I will give the offense a little bit of a buffer, obviously with Rourke coming back from the injury, and I did feel like on that first drive, you had I think 2nd and 1, and then he didn't convert. And then I think the second drive was the one Miles Cross just had that brutal drop on 3rd down.
Yeah.
Throw right through his hands. So, I mean, who knows what would have happened on that drive instead of punting. But, yeah, offense really got it going. I thought didn't show you a ton of flashy stuff. Like, it was pretty much the same stuff they've been running all season and just kicked their teeth in, which was awesome to see. No sacks for the offensive line again this week. Really controlled the game. I thought besides ripping off chunk yardage in the running attack, about as good as you could have hoped for with Rourke coming back from that thumb injury. So,
yeah, I think I was actually going to go A- here, and I was going to be tougher on the offense than the defense just because I guess I'm a little bit grading based on comparison here. I think the defense played a little bit better than the offense did yesterday. But again, we're picking at hairs here, so
we really are, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, Nate. We have 3 games left. You have kind of this Signetti closing trio here. So
Yes.
everyone, I'm sure at this point, it's been on every freaking broadcast 12 times a game now of his opening, remarks at the basketball game where he was saying everybody sucks and I use the best team of all time. I don't disagree with him, but I think a lot of people, myself included, were like, all right, dude, like let's crawl, walk, run here a little bit. And he was like, no, we're just going to start sprinting right away. So, which I love.
Yeah.
And shame on me for wanting to start slow. But yeah, I mean, now you're looking down the stretch. You have Michigan and then a bye week before you go to Columbus. And then you come home for the bucket game to end the season. I think anything less than 11-1 at this point is kind of a disappointment, which
It feels
like,
crazy to say,
I know
but yeah.
but like IU opens next week is 13.5 point favorites right now at home against Michigan. Last time I checked,
Yep.
IU has not been. I think IU's only been favored like one time ever against Michigan.
Yeah, so I've got the Brett McMurphy tweet pulled up right here. So it's Indiana is favored by 14 points versus Michigan via Circa Sports. This is the first time in the past 43 IU Michigan games, so since 1968,
Yeah,
that Michigan is an underdog to Indiana. Michigan's won 42 of the last 44.
yeah, yeah.
Insane.
That's insane, totally insane. And one of them was like COVID year, where did you just beat the snot out of them at home, which was fun.
Yep.
Yeah, like they're 5-4. So at this point, Michigan, I don't know who they close with besides.
So Michigan has Northwestern as the other one. So their win last week, now I'm spacing on who it was, but was actually like very critical in their bowl eligibility.
Right.
So it feels very weird that we're in these final three games of the season and us as Indiana are talking about our college football playoff chances, and Michigan coming to Bloomington is, hoping to get to 6 wins so they can play in the postseason.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Like anyone I think that's followed college football or the Big Ten this season knows, like their quarterback position has just been in flux all season. They've started 3 different guys. None of them have been entirely effective, honestly. Statistically, we'll have a ton of stuff on the matchup. They're statistically, from like a profile perspective, honestly are a lot like Northwestern in terms of how they play on both sides of the ball, and at this point where their offense and defenses stack up against the rest of the country. Obviously, IU handled Northwestern on the road, and that was earlier in the season. At this point, I feel like Indiana's a much better team than they were when they played Northwestern like a month and a half ago.
Yep.
But yeah, it's going to be a fascinating game. But it's a big one. Like anytime Michigan's in town, obviously that's a big game. I think you'll expect the Rock to be totally fired up.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And at this point, like I don't think the Washington game felt like a super trappy game, as did kind of the Michigan State one. I don't think Michigan is necessarily a trap game, especially with a bye the following week. But even if there wasn't a bye, I think this team has earned the right for us to not believe they would be looking ahead. But obviously, if you take care of business against Michigan, which again is hilarious that we're like, yeah, just take care of business against the defending national champions at home.
Just win by 2 touchdowns again. Just do what you've been doing. Yeah, easy enough.
You're favored by 2 touchdowns against the defending national champions at home.
After already beating the national champion runner-up. Yeah.
And I will say, I'm glad you brought that up, Nate. I will find the clip, and I will recirculate it, hopefully this time next week. But in our season preview podcast, a certain writer on this podcast right now, his hot take was that IU would beat both of the teams that were in the national championship game last season, which got some eyebrows. That's all I'm saying. It got some reactions. So I don't know who it was or if it'll be right, but I just remembered that some
person put it out there.
Like, yeah, he said something like that, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is very crazy of him.
Let's hope he's right. That would be cool.
That would be.
Yeah, it's a big one. And we're gonna have a ton of stuff coming out. The Tuesday's a huge day. Most important thing in the country in a long time.
The first college football playoff rankings. Yeah,
IU lands in the playoff rankings on Tuesday night.
Exactly.
I think at this point they've done everything possible, and I've already seen people comparing kind of resumes and statistical profiles from the last couple seasons. Like honestly, at this point, IU's resume is probably better than Michigan's was last year. And Michigan in the first poll started at number 3. I don't think IU will be 3rd when the polls come out on Tuesday. But I think anything lower than 8, which is where they are in the AP poll right now, would be honestly, I'm expecting IU to be like 11th or something. But it's Michigan's a huge one. Then you're 10-0, and you have at that point everything to play for. Um,
Yep.
Penn State lost to Ohio State. So now the only unbeaten teams in the conference now are Oregon and Indiana. Um, so don't want to look ahead, and obviously a lot of football still to be played. But you get through Michigan on Saturday. You have a bye week and 2 games left with everything to play for, which is kind of crazy.
I think that bye week is so huge too. I was saying this yesterday of just you go back to our previous bye week and it was into what we thought was going to be the biggest game, and now and just looks at Nebraska and you're like, oh God, what are they going to get bowl eligibility? I don't know. But just coming out of that bye week, it seemed like it came at the perfect time. Our defense, I feel like that was around the time where I mentioned earlier they seemed a little bit tired. Um, if we can get through Michigan, who is going to be a test, no matter their record, they've got dudes. They're
Yeah,
gonna be big bodied dudes that can run the ball. Um, yeah, you mentioned the 3 quarterbacks now down to 2 with Jack Tuttle retiring. Um, so you'll have Warren that if we can continue to force turnovers, and Orgy if we can stop the run like we have, kind of limits them on offense. And a bye week to rest up, and then you go into Ohio State. And I was thinking about this yesterday. Can Ohio State actually be looking ahead in that game, knowing that it's Michigan that they'll have afterwards, which they should be favored by, if we're favored by 14, they should be favored by 20 plus probably.
right.
Um, can they be looking ahead to that though, having lost 3 years in a row to them? Potentially.
Yeah, you
They
never
shouldn't.
know. I think it's going to be so that game will be so hyped up. I think for a ton of reasons. I think you'll definitely either have game day or big noon there for that one.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I would be surprised if they were. I think if they were undefeated and playing us, I think you'd have a better
different situation. Yeah.
chance. But I think since they already have one loss, and obviously I would be shocked if a 2-loss Ohio State team doesn't get in the playoff anyway. But uh,
Yep.
yeah, I think if they were undefeated, there's a better likelihood of that. But yeah, one less Ohio State team. I think they know. Obviously, their margin is really small right now. They look good against Penn State. Like Penn State's offense is still like bad, I would say. But I mean, Ohio State looks solid, and they lost. They have the best loss in the country too.
Yeah. Yeah, Ohio State, my concern for Ohio State going into that game was their line play, and that game finished with their offensive line just completely bullying Penn
Yeah,
State's D line.
yeah,
And
that's a Tom
I
Allen
gue-
effect. Yeah,
I guess you can say the exact same thing. The Ohio State D line, 4 straight stops on the goal line essentially.
yep.
Um, so yeah, that concern maybe is in the past, but um, yeah, it'll be huge. And then weirdly enough, we haven't even mentioned the bucket game yet, which just at this point doesn't feel like that big of a concern. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the
Purdue started to look a little bit better.
they've
Two like
shown flashes of
back-to-back overtime
competence.
losses. Yeah, or I guess Oregon in between, but yeah, lost to Illinois in overtime and then Northwestern in overtime. Starting to kind of look a little bit better, but I think what are they 1-9 or 1-8 right now? 0-8
Yeah,
in the league.
yeah,
So I mean, who the heck knows at that point? But I think Sammy will call that one like he said all year, like a pick your score game. Um, but I don't know. I'm never, even though we're 9-0 and look like we're the undefeated Miami Dolphins or whatever. I'm still never gonna just chalk wins in or assume anything.
no, there's far too much scar tissue to be able to do that.
Yeah, so I don't know. Who knows? And rivalry game, like I'm sure they'll be fired up because their season's already over and always last guys like football games ever, so they always play tough and whatever. So yeah, kind of final thoughts here, Nate. IU convincing win to get the spittoon back. Totally dominant in all 3 phases of the game. Sitting at 9-0, a top 10 team in the country now, with a lot left to play for. So I guess kind of sum up the game for us, and then kind of what's at stake here with Michigan and beyond as we get ready for what should be hopefully a really, really exciting end of the fall here.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing is I'm just gonna go back to I'll call it advice that you gave in our season preview pods kind of stuff of enjoy the season. You one of your goals was just to be able to go into every week being excited about it, enjoying every single win, enjoying it even if it's a loss, you're having fun, enjoying college football season because for 9 months out of the year we don't have college football and we just sit around talking about it and being in a spot where we absolutely can't wait for those 3 months to come around that we can watch Indiana. And I'm enjoying the hell out of this season. It's been absolutely awesome. 9 Indiana we thought was just a dream that we could get to maybe at the end of the very end of a season, if we went on a historical run. And now, like we just talked about, looking those 3 games ahead that we have, 9 Indiana feels like the absolute floor. Like it would be completely bottoming out, and things would have had to go very, very wrong to end up at just 9 Indiana. So we're in a great spot. I absolutely love watching this team. I think I planned going to 1 or 2 games this year, and now I've been to 4 or 5, something like that, because they just suck me in, and I keep wanting to go back. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. We'll have lots more on the site this week. Like we said, the college football playoff initial rankings come out on Tuesday. So we'll have you covered with kind of live reactions and maybe an emergency pod on Tuesday night when those come out. Like we've seen in the past, the initial rankings for the playoff are always huge. Based on that, it gives you, especially in a 12-team playoff now, your kind of margin for error on how high you could go or how far you could fall and still be in the playoff.
Yeah, the
So,
AP poll is flawed because it brings it's in effect in the preseason. So
right.
we started at ranked, 75 or whatever and have to work our way all the way up to 8. If we would have started at 2, we would still be at 2 because we're 9-0. So it's nice to see we'll have a fresh blank slate with these college football playoff rankings, and hopefully we can start near the top.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm expecting some brand bias to come through. It's definitely a thing in college football. I think 12 teams with on-campus matchups this season, they're going to do whatever they can to get the Penn States and the Alabamas of the world's hosting games instead of Indiana, but we'll see how that all shakes out. Yeah, I think an 11-win Indiana team. I don't know how they get left out, but obviously a lot of football left to be played. So
Yep.
big one against Michigan coming up on Saturday here before the bye week or the second bye week for Indiana. We'll have you covered with everything you need for that matchup throughout the week. Um, Games at 3:30 Eastern on Saturday on CBS, so another national standalone broadcast for Indiana. So great eyes on what hopefully should be another good performance for the Hoosiers. So Nate, thanks for joining us this evening. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure if you're watching this on YouTube, it would means a lot to subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. And then feel free to like and drop a comment on the video about what you thought about the game, stuff you want to see in future episodes, all that good stuff. Yeah, stay tuned. HoosierHuddle.com will have you covered for college football playoff this week, as well as the Michigan game on Saturday.